coming up on AC 24/7. WNBA star Brittney Griner is coming home. What we're learning about the prisoner swap, the negotiation, and her journey back to the U.S. Plus, marriage equality takes a step forward as Congress sends the Respect for Marriage Act to the president's desk. And the 90s hit film Matilda is getting a musical remake, and we've got to look. Welcome to AC 24/7. I'm Lamont Baldwin. Brittney Griner is on her way home. The WNBA star had been detained in Russia since February of this year. Her case drew international attention with advocates demanding her release. President Joe Biden says efforts to bring Griner home took painstaking and intense negotiations. The Advocate Channel's Isabel Rosales has more.
She's safe. She's on a plane. She's on her way home.
After 9 months spent in Russian detention, WNBA star Brittney Griner is finally free.
Today is just a happy day for me and my family, so I'm going to smile right now.
President Joe Biden sitting alongside Griner's wife in the Oval Office as he spoke to the Olympic gold medalist on the phone.
This is a day we've worked toward for a long time.
Griner was arrested on drug charges at a Russian airport last February. Testifying, she inadvertently packed the cannabis oil found in her luggage. She was sentenced to 9 years in prison in early August.
She endured mistreatment in a show trial in Russia with characteristic grit and incredible dignity.
Griner's lawyer confirming the release was part of a prisoner swap with convicted arms dealer Victor Bout. The exchange did not include Paul Whelan, another American the State Department has declared wrongfully detained in Russia.
For totally illegitimate reasons, Russia is treating Paul's case differently than Brittney's.
The president promises efforts to secure his release will continue.
BG and I will remain committed to the work of getting every American home, including Paul, whose family is in our hearts today as we celebrate BG being home.
In Washington, I'm Isabel Rosales reporting.
The swap comes at the time of heightened tensions over Ukraine, but the U.S. says the prisoner swap would not impact support for Ukraine's defense. The White House has given final approval to a bill that will protect same-sex and interracial marriages. The bill does not set a national requirement that all states legalize same-sex marriage, but it does require each state to recognize couples married in another state. It's a relief for hundreds of thousands of gay couples who have married since the Supreme Court's decision legalizing marriage in 2015. President Biden is expected to sign the bill into law. The Supreme Court is weighing a historic case with broad implications for elections in the U.S. The question is whether to allow state legislators to draw congressional maps and set voting rules with zero oversight from state courts. After 3 hours of debate, the high court justices seem divided in 3 different directions. The Advocate Channel's Jessica Schneider has more.
Who controls U.S. elections? That's the central question before the Supreme Court, in a case that revolves around an obscure legal theory that says state legislatures should have the final say on election procedures and redistricting, not state courts.
The blast radius from their theory would sow elections chaos, forcing a confusing 2-track system with one set of rules for federal elections and another for state ones.
North Carolina Republicans who lead the state legislature are challenging a ruling from their state Supreme Court, striking down a redistricting map they drew. They're relying on the independent state legislature theory, the idea that state legislatures should have unchecked power to control election procedures, and that state courts and state constitutions have no role in checking that power. It's a concept that was first raised by Chief Justice William Rehnquist in the Bush v. Gore decision. And while 4 conservatives on the court have previously expressed interest in the issue, Justice Brett Kavanaugh seemed to push back on it as too broad of an expansion of state legislative power.
Your position seems to go further than Chief Justice Rehnquist's position in Bush v. Gore, where he seemed to acknowledge that state courts would have a role interpreting state law.
Some Trump supporters seized on the theory in 2020 to argue state lawmakers in battleground states had the power to override the will of voters and choose presidential electors who favored Trump. The Supreme Court's ruling likely would not extend to the issue of electors, but some are warning it could be a slippery slope if the court finds in favor of the Republicans here.
it would make the election-related decisions of legislators effectively unreviewable by state court judges, cutting neutral arbiters out of the process, and it would allow politically motivated legislators to engage in extreme disenfranchisement of voters.
The hours-long debate centered around what the founders intended when they wrote the Constitution and the meaning of the Elections Clause that says the times, places, and manner of holding elections are for the legislature to determine.
I think what might strike a person is that this is a proposal that gets rid of the normal checks and balances. Legislators, we all know, have their own self-interest. They want to get reelected. And so there are countless times when they have incentives to suppress votes.
Holiday shopping is breaking spending records, but Gen Z is leading the frenzy. More eager than any other group when it comes to hunting for deals, the Advocate Channel's Jen Sullivan has a closer look at what economists say is behind this trend.
What inflation? In what possible recession? The gloomy economic headlines apparently not worrying one group of excited shoppers this holiday season, Gen Z. That's young shoppers born between 1997 and 2012. And industry experts say they're leading the pack this 2022 holiday shopping season. According to mall operator Preet, which owns shopping centers primarily on the East Coast, Gen Z shoppers were out in force Thanksgiving weekend, a trend expected to continue.
They've grown up with technology and shopping online. It's nothing exciting or new to them.
The National Retail Federation says overall, more consumers are returning to malls and in-store shopping this holiday season, and Gen Z is having a high turnout.
There's much more optimism in spite of the challenges on inflation and price pressures. I think people are really ready to be out there.
The NRF estimates nearly 123 million people visited brick and mortar stores over the Black Friday and holiday weekend. That's up 17% from last year. And when it comes to clothing, industry experts say Gen Z is very picky about brands.
There definitely is a shift among the Gen Z generation regarding fast fashion. They recognize that it's not as good for the environment.
And that's great news for young entrepreneurs like Camila Romero,
Tiger Print,
whose clothing brand caters to a Gen Z customer base.
I'm happy to be a part of that mentality and that wave that's been happening in the fashion industry.
For today's Consumer Watch, I'm Jen Sullivan.
So why should we care about this group of consumers? Well, Gen Z is among the fastest growing groups in the country, along with millennials. Together, this demographic is expected to grow to 70% of the population by 2028 versus 60% today. That's according to a note from Cohen Equity Research. Well, the first 3 episodes of Harry and Meghan are available on Netflix, and it's like the real-life version of The Crown. During the program, the couple discussed the start of their relationship, the media exposure they both experienced, and the death of Harry's mother, Princess Diana. Tensions between Harry and his father, King Charles III, may also be addressed. The new Matilda movie musical arrives on Netflix on Christmas Day, but if you can't wait until then, you can check it out in theaters sooner rather than later. The Tony Award-winning musical gets the movie treatment, starring actress Emma Thompson playing harsh headmistress Miss Trunchbull. The film's director knows the material very well, as he was nominated for a Tony Award for the stage production. Thank you for joining us for AC 24/7. For content that advocates for you, go to advocatechannel.com, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and subscribe on YouTube. For the Advocate Channel, I'm Lamont Baldwin.